Well, for more, we're now joined by Stephen Chase, senior parliamentary reporter for the Globe and Mail. Stephen, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
So it was the Prime Minister who reached out to Donald Trump once that social media post came out last week. And then to my understanding, it was Donald Trump who extended the dinner invitation. How much of a gamble was this for the Prime Minister?
I don't think the Prime Minister had a choice, gamble or not. Relations with the U.S. are like 90% of our foreign policy, and you have to be on good terms with whoever's in power. And if there's an opportunity for FaceTime with Mr. Trump before he gets consumed with the business of government, take it.
Yeah, take it, and they did. So I'm wondering, it's been a few days since that dinner, which surprised a lot of people because it was kept under fairly tight wraps. What has emerged to you and to your paper when it comes to the arguments that were made by the Canadian delegation, the promises made by the Canadian delegation to Donald Trump?
Sure. The Canadian delegation was trying to politely make the case that your concerns about the borders, security, Canada and Mexico are not the same, where the order of magnitude, the fact that 23,000 people were intercepted trying to slip across the Canada-U.S. border versus 1.5 million trying to slip across the Mexican border into the United States. So they made that case. They tried to point out that the impact on the U.S. economy. And I think it's worth noting, of course, they did not come away with any promises. Mr. Trump loves tariffs. He thinks it's a great way to deal with the world. And so there's agreements for more talks, but most importantly, the Canadian government promised him that they would deploy additional helicopters, additional drones, and additional staff on the Canadian side of the border. And that's what we're waiting for this week.
Yeah, waiting for this week. We know that there's going to be some type of announcement. Any idea of a timeline from the government on that one?
Last week they were saying it would be in the fall statement or before the fall statement. So, I mean, realistically, I think it's this week or next week.
Mm-hmm. Because the time is running out, because Parliament will be wrapping up in about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how long it goes.
On the 17th, yeah.
On the 17th, the official day on the calendar, though you never know when they actually wrap up for the Christmas break. But, you say that there's been no assurances back, and we know that Donald Trump loves tariffs, but we also know that Donald Trump loves negotiation. He talks about it time and again. Is there any indication this 25% tariff threat was a negotiating ploy rather than a real threat that might come into fruition come January?
I think they have to plan for it being an opening negotiation. But I also think there's psychology at play here. I think the message that Mr. Trump is trying to send to the world with these threats, because there's more than just against Canada, is as of November 6th, you should no longer be dealing with Joe Biden. Even though there's still months until the January 20th inauguration, Mr. Trump wants to tell the world that you should be coming to see me and start working with me. So regardless of whether it's a ploy or anything, we have to act as if it's a real threat, and we have to keep making the case. As you saw on the weekend, he also just threatened all the BRICS countries with 100% tariff. So unless they abandon any idea of an alternate currency for international transactions. So we're dealing with a man who loves tariffs and loves attention, and we have to make sure that we can help him solve his problems and be there if he wants to talk.
Be there if he wants to talk. I'm wondering then, what does this say for the challenge that is ahead for this Prime Minister? As we know, there's going to be an election sometime in the next calendar year. The Prime Minister will try to create policy that improves Liberal numbers. How hemmed in is he now that Donald Trump is returning back to the White House?
Well, I mean, he's got to face the music at some point next year. It's a question of how long Jagmeet Singh's going to keep him in power. There's some expectation that maybe he'll run on a budget, so we'll have an early election. It's hard to say. The fact is, Mr. Trump takes power January 20th, and he said these tariffs would be part of one of his first acts. So like it or not, Justin Trudeau is going to be the one dealing with it.
Yeah, the one dealing for it now. Any indication as to, because I know there's been some reporting on this, as to whether or not Donald Trump would rather work with Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre?
I actually think that's not as important as we think it is. I think Mr. Trump likes to be able to demonstrate to his base that he's got a reaction from other countries and that they're moving, they're jumping when he says jump. So it doesn't really matter who's doing the jumping.
And of course, we are waiting for the government to introduce their package, whatever that may be, to answer the concerns being raised by Donald Trump. Stephen Chase, thank you for the time tonight.
You're welcome.